Supporting today's hybrid workforce at federal, civilian, and defense agencies demands agile and secure network access, whether employees are working at home or in the office. Network security needs to be robust enough to keep government data and applications secure while simultaneously delivering a reliable and high-speed user experience. That's just as important for a large contractor workforces supporting federal missions as it is for federal employees. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining us to talk about that today are Guy Cavallo, Chief Information Officer at the Office of Personnel Management, Scott Andersen, Distinguished Solution Architect at Verizon, and Steve Vetter, Senior Global Government Strategist at Cisco. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And Guy, let me start with you. Set the stage for us just a little. Give us a brief picture of the scope of your agency's workforce and the extent to which it supports hybrid work arrangements, not only internally, but helping other agencies as well.
All right, no, thank you, Wyatt. And I want to start off before I get into OPM, just reminding everybody that OPM does serve as a champion of the nation's 2.3 million federal employees in our workforce who serve the American public. Again, the federal government is better able to serve that American population because OPM is focused on positioning the federal government as a model employer. And being that model employer means supporting the hybrid workforce. So at OPM specifically, we have three different modes of work. We have those employees that are 100% in a physical OPM office because their work requires it to physically be there to work on equipment or process papers, things like that. Then as a telework sponsored agency, we allow our employees to telework a minimum of 2 days a week that they're in the physical office. Again, that is determined on a case-by-case basis, employee-by-employee basis, depending on their work. And then we have a remote workforce of workers that are 100% not at an OPM facility. I can tell you as CIO, I have been able to take advantage of all three of those modes of work, particularly remote workers, where I've been able to hire very skilled technologists who don't live in the Washington, D.C. area that I would never have gotten to move to Washington, D.C., and therefore would have missed them as being an employee by allowing them to remain remotely. And I know later on we'll talk about different ways that we manage and monitor the performance of a remote worker and a teleworker, but that's where OPM is in a nutshell.
I appreciate your laying that out for us. So next, let me ask, what are the key challenges that you and your IT team continue to face in ensuring that your employees and contractors have adequate and secure access to the resources they need, regardless of where they work?
Sure. I joined OPM in the middle of COVID, so I never got to know it as an agency before COVID. But what I observed at OPM and many other agencies is we sent people home with their laptop the same way that we would send them home with a laptop on a snow day. But the thing that was different is the next day they were still at home, and the next day they're still at home. So now we had employees trying to work on small laptop screens where in the original plan, they would never have worked on that week after week after week, versus being in the office where they have multiple monitors, able to work on large documents simultaneously and be able to have all the capabilities of being in the office. So one initiative I launched at OPM was to provide our remote workers and our teleworkers with the same technologies at their remote location as they would have in the office. Therefore, if they had 2 monitors in the office, they would now have 2 monitors at their home location, able to work on those multiple screens. If they're like me, I think it's a slow day if I don't have at least 25 windows open at once. Again, trying to do that on a laptop screen and manage where you are and not get is very difficult. So we made sure we equipped everybody with the same equipment that they would have in the office. Therefore, they're able to work the same level of productivity that they did in the office. The other part of this was a telephone. When I got to OPM, I found that we had employees were using their home phones to call citizens because, again, they had their laptop and they had their home phone as their way of communicating. So one thing we did is we implemented a productivity suite that included the telephone as part of the suite, so that wherever you took your laptop, as long as you had an internet connection, your OPM phone number was with you. So you could take it to the office and you were good. You could work at home and not have to use your home equipment. So those were a couple of things, Wyatt, that we implemented that are in place now that are making OPM so productive.
Terrific. Scott and Steve, let me bring you in here. How are solutions like SD-WAN, SASE, 5G, and AI, et cetera, helping agencies support a more seamless and secure hybrid work experience without hindering employees' user experience? Scott, maybe you could start first.
Absolutely. Thanks, Wyatt. Guy, good to meet you virtually. So basically, when we're talking about technologies and you're talking about SASE, you're talking about SD-WAN. First of all, it's an alphabet soup, right? How many acronyms can we create in a short time period? So really quickly, SD-WAN stands for Software Defined Wide Area Network. It represents a new paradigm in how networks operate. When you consider an SD-WAN solution, the biggest difference from a traditional network is there's two connections to every location. Now, and Guy just nicely talked about the home worker, right? And what that's like. You're not going to put two network connections into a home worker's life. They have two connections likely. They have their cell phone and they have their laptop, but they're not going to be in an SD-WAN scenario. But what it does do is it does make the network more reliable. So when they are connecting in, when they are VPNing in, they have a more reliable network. Then there's, I mean, the rest of that alphabet soup, right? SASE, which stands for Secure Access Service Edge, which basically allows us to create a perimeter around the assets of an organization, but extending that perimeter out into the cloud, into wherever the organization, the entity is going and trying to utilize their resources. Underneath SASE, there's another technology set called Zero Trust. Zero Trust allows us to basically do something that I know as a 30+ year IT administrator, it's been my dream. Least privileged access. It's the dream of all administrators. You know, we hate those wide open files. Zero Trust gives us that ability, gives us that capability. And then the last piece, and I'll touch very briefly on that, and then I'll pass it over to Steve real quick, is the concept of AI. And I'll just leave you with this kind of look into the future when there is such the thing as an AI-driven and managed network. Imagine a situation where, you know, Guy says, hey, everybody in OPM, you're going to be on a call today at 2 p.m. The AI system looks at Guy's calendar and says, oh, wait, I'm out. Guy just set an all hands call. That means the network needs to change. And the AI system automatically changes the network, provides the environment for that all hands call. And then when Guy hangs up his phone and he's done and the call's over, the AI system sets the network back to the way it was before. And that applies to commercial, to government, to everybody. I mean, think about, you know, the old joke about end of month accounting, right? You know, it's the end of the month, it's the end of the quarter, right? I know at my organization, Verizon, we often have that problem, right? End of quarter. Well, the network can tune itself to better support APAR activities at end of month, end of quarter. But then, Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the great news about what you just said, Scott, is that technology already exists. And the important thing is that you bring it into what Guy said, which is thinking about an end-to-end productivity suite for all of his employees, whether they're in the office, whether they're teleworkers, or whether they're completely home workers. The ability for the network infrastructure today to provide the visibility and analytics driven by predictive AI for the last 5 years enables that user experience to be something that is incredibly positive and enables the security because of now that visibility and analytics leads to automation and orchestration, which reduces costs overall, but more importantly, proactively can fix issues before they actually adversely impact any of the OPM employees or frankly, any of the 2.3 million users of the infrastructure for the federal government. I'd add one additional thing, that this is also a part of culture. So if you look at the Workspace Innovation Lab down at 18th and FGSA headquarters, it's also about bringing these technologies in place with the environment. How should offices evolve in order to ensure that they are getting the most out of their activity time in the office, that collaboration, that user experience, the culture? So that now Guy, as the CIO, can provide the means for the best productivity of OPM. And in fact, all agency CIOs can do that for their agencies.
So, Guy, talk to us a little about how OPM has delivered better service to the public due to empowering a hybrid workforce with these technologies.
Oh, sure. Thank you for that, Wyatt. I think if people have been following the news, they'll see that our retirement services backlog on retirement cases at its lowest level in years. And again, this is all in part of us empowering our hybrid workforce so that if an employee does go home, they're not losing capabilities, they're maintaining the same capabilities that they had in the office. As another guest highlighted, we are using zero trust networking. So whether they're plugged in at the OPM facility or whether they're going home and using their home internet, we have a secure connection that we're able to monitor, manage, control the whole time. So we've really closed the gap on what's the difference of working in the office versus working remotely. A couple other things I'll add is, not only by giving the employee a telephone on their laptop, we also enable them to have video or audio conference calling. And what I've seen at OPM over my time there is that hardly anybody just does a call anymore. It's when you need to talk to somebody, you start a video call with them and have actually more human interface than if we were in the same building, unless they were in my own office. If they were 2 or 3 floors away, it would have been just an audio call. Now we're actually collaborating face to face. So I'm seeing that human interaction is in the hybrid world of work is actually better than it was when everybody was in the office. So I think our numbers at OPM show that productivity enhancement has happened.
That's a great example and one I think we can all relate to. Steve, talk to us a little about your additional perspective. What have you seen civilian agencies in their ability to deliver on their missions more effectively after deploying some of these technologies?
Absolutely. And we have seen that across numerous agencies. Just to give Guy some science behind it, my master's happens to be in communication studies, and the written word is only 8% of human communication. 35% is associated with verbal intonation, etc. The video, being able to see someone and how they respond, is absolutely essential. So, for example, when NASA went home and had a huge number of their employees, like 4 times the number of contractors exist in NASA as to main workers, and now they were all working from home, a huge number, but they still had core mission capabilities. They had an extremely well-designed network, and they could then tune and tweak the elements to do and give that kind of visibility in order to go forward. We saw that at Department of Energy Labs. We've seen that at places like the FBI. All of these organizations are designed to say, how do I accomplish the mission based upon the technologies that we have? 2 really important points. Number one, that technology has to be interoperable. Every one of the vendors that you should be dealing with in the federal government should be focused on open extensibility, where we work with every other vendor because the mission of the United States is that critical in terms of where we go and how to move forward. Second thing is that industry should be making the investments in order to drive better capabilities like Guy was just talking about. As an example, on this platform that we're using right now, WebEx, if a dog is barking in the background of any of us, you won't hear it. If there's construction work going on, because AI is already bringing those capabilities to bear, and we're investing billions for new features, new functions, which agencies already get because they own that particular product. So industry, absolutely critical to continue to work with our partners and drive forward in that area. And we have seen that as a transformational change for civilian agencies. And my guess, Scott, is for defense agencies as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, if you look at Steve's background, he's got aircraft carriers. And I think when you look at DOD, right, the DOD folks, there's a slightly variant reality for them, right? You're not going to have somebody on an aircraft carrier that's a remote worker or a hybrid worker, right? They're going to be on there. They're going to be on the ship. But the DoD structures still have a lot of remote workers, a lot of people that work from home, a lot of logistics, supply chain, all of those folks work from home. And so I'll just simply say, ditto to everything Steve said, because he's absolutely right. And I'll go one step further. I apologize for leaning away from the camera a little bit, but I'm going to say this is the future. In the future, this is the device. that people are going to be using, right? If you think about the power of 5G, the power of AI, the connected reality that the cell phone brings, this device, right? Because I can turn the camera on this device in a 5G zone. I can have a very adequate meeting, live meeting, face to face with anybody in the world. I don't care. I can do it anywhere. I'm no longer bound to my office. So what was the hybrid in 2020 when we all went home and we were all scared of COVID, and rightfully so, that hybrid worker of the future, they're going to be on their phone. They're going to be anywhere they want to be. So truly the dream that the internet foretold of, or whatever that word is, I apologize, whatever that initial dream of the internet, right? Any device, anywhere, anytime, we're finally there. So the future is in your hand.
Terrific. Well, gentlemen, last question for each of you. What more still needs to be done, or what recommendations would you offer to help agencies further empower today's hybrid workforce? Guy, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Wyatt. Yeah, the first thing I would say is don't be penny wise and pound foolish about properly equipping your hybrid workforce. The cost of equipping the hybrid workforce that isn't in the office is just a fraction of the productivity improvements that you'll see by properly investing in them. For example, those of us that are old enough to remember the tube-based monitors, again, today you can buy flat screen monitors for a fraction of the cost of those old monitors. A digital camera and keyboards are about $20 today. Again, we're not talking about needing to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to equip somebody at home. It's just a few $100s gives them all that capability. So again, my advice is don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Give your people the tools that they need to have all the productivity that they have in the office wherever they're working.
And Steve, what would you add?
I'd say Guy is spot on. Leverage the technology that's there. The partnership between industry and government means that we are now working together to deliver new features, new functions, new capabilities, because that infrastructure is software defined. I'm using a phone that's 4 years old, but it still gives me all of the current things because it's got a new software update and upgrade. All of that is part of the investment that Guy made when he bought that initial subscription to the particular product. So that's free. He continues to get new things. He is future-proofed as he moves forward in that area. And when you do that, that means you now have the ability to have enterprise visibility. That visibility means I can optimize the experience of the user and optimize the security aspects of it. Being retired naval intelligence, I'm always looking for what are the adversaries doing in that area. And that leads to what we saw in the COVID pandemic, the ability of the government to be resilient in the face of an unknown, catastrophic, potential cultural challenge, and they rose to the occasion with very few hiccups in that area. That resilience from a digital standpoint means they can now be operationally and mission resilient in order to provide capabilities to not only the citizens, but to the employees that Guy was talking about.
And Scott, your last recommendations.
You know, I was listening to what Guy was saying, and I was laughing. I wasn't laughing at you, Guy. I was just laughing because many years ago, when my hair was not gray, and it was actually, I think it was brown, although I honestly don't remember the color it was back then. I actually deployed a web interface system, a video conferencing system for a customer. And each of those video conferencing units that went to the executives, and we bought two, one for the executive's office and one for the executive's home. We bought two. The two devices cost $8,000, $4,000 a piece. We bought 20 of those. Now today, $160,000, I could equip 500,000 people, right? I give them a $99 camera, I'm good to go, right? The world has evolved so much in what you can and cannot do that the next thing, right? So when we get to the next level where we have an integrated AI system, right? So when I do this, instead of it moving around on the screen, that's just Scott moving, right? The camera will move with me. The camera will track me. The camera will follow me. That will allow people to do all sorts of different things in their home office. And then, Steve nicely pointed out, I thought it was a great reminder, WebEx itself it's removing the dog, because actually my dog is right now barking just outside of this call, but you will never hear my dog bark because WebEx has removed it. It's awesome. The technology for the hybrid employee continues to evolve and get better.
Well, and I'll just close with saying that obviously the most important thing is to be working backwards, almost, if you will, from your workforce. What do they really need? And the good news of what you've described is all the ways we can make that more fluid and secure for them. But it's still important to be paying attention to what do we want them to do and what do we want them to do next to serve the public. Well, Guy Cavallo, hey, thank you so much for joining us from OPM. Scott Andersen from Verizon and Steve Vetter from Cisco. Thank you all for your respective insights. We really appreciate your joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.